Um, First, to the question of positioning. So this positioning question in the context, or positioning in the context of questions. Positioning, there's a couple of different types of positioning. Some of my favorite ones are things like if I were to ask somebody how they feel about something, or somebody talks to me about an experience and I say, how did you feel about that? With that question, doesn't you can also talk about it in the context of colonizing, but the positioning idea is I've then put that person in a position to respond in the context of feeling. And that might be completely inconsistent with their experience of what happened. And so the first thing they're going to have to do is kind of move their response through the lens of feeling that I've introduced into the question. And they might be able to do that, and that might be a cool thing to do. If I was going to do that, I'd actually do it intentionally. I could say feel or taste, or I could do a bunch of different things just as kind of, if the person like is struggling with a response and can't quite come up with anything, I might create something like that to give them some options of response. But to do it first thing off, so that's like a positioning thing that puts them in the position of actually having to go through a specific lens in the context of response. The other thing is a question if somebody were to ask you, why are you so angry? Why are you so angry right now? So the thing about the positioning of that question is that it puts me in a position then as a respondent of going, okay, so first I have to defend myself around the anger because that may or may not be what's going on for me. And then I have to kind of situate my response in the context of the other person's experience. And that's kind of the last thing that I would want to do when I'm asking somebody a question. So my intention around questions is to, as I said, to create as many possibilities as I can in terms of their response, so that not only would it be something that we talk about experience near, but it might even be something that they're just kind of putting together as we're talking. So it creates this real kind of spontaneity and availability of experience when the person's responding. And it's really kind of cool. And I got to throw out, because much of what I'm trying to do recently is about talking about these notions, not in the context of therapy. This is about the kind of questions I ask people all the time. The idea that I'm really conscious when I'm talking to somebody about not putting them in a position period, where their response can be about their experience, and they don't have to like codify or translate their response in the context of the question that I'm asking. That my question is not, in fact, limiting how they can respond, because if I want to really kind of find out about somebody else's experience, I don't want to be limiting that description in the context of the question I'm asking. So it's just kind of a thing to like ponder the effects of the questions that we ask in the context of what kind of responses we might get. Like there's a direct relationship between the responses that we get and the sorts of questions that we ask. So that's a thing. The other thing that occurred to me that it relates to what I was talking about yesterday in terms of the power thing. Speaking of anger, so we're all at least I'm very familiar with when I get into an angry place, what that feels like for me, not very good. But when I start to act from that place, I can affect lots of people around. And I was talking about the idea of the opposite of that and what that might be. And it occurred to me that opposite suggestion probably isn't a great suggestion. The notion that there's an opposite limits access to all other kinds of possibilities. And perhaps rather than an opposite, it would be more like a different flavor or different color. I was talking about that in the context of the other things. This is a thing that I'm asking myself, however. So when I'm asking myself about what that different thing might be, the alternative to the spreading of anger thing that I'm very familiar with and is easy to do, thinking about, or any negative emotion, upset or whatever it happens to be, that there's a different flavor that's not about something that adversely affects others, but that could positively affect others in terms of that energy spreading thing. So yeah, so to move that away from a binary good, bad, like anger and happiness are opposites, which I actually don't agree with at all, but that there's the anger color and that there's a slightly different color that doesn't have the effects that the anger color has, that I'm looking to get better at learning how to spread around. So anyway, so those are a couple of things to think about. Hope that's useful for folks. Once again, this is What's Next with Dr. Joel. I'm Dr. Joel, and I will be back tomorrow, and I don't have any idea what I'm going to be talking about.